As you are aware, Strikeforce Pearl was established in December last year to investigate serious hate crimes and significant criminal activity committed upon places of worship. It currently is comprised of 48 officers from the Counter-Terrorism Command, Central Metropolitan Region and the State Crime Command, and is supported through a proactive command conducting taskings and patrols of high value and potential targets. It has already identified 14 offences for continued investigation and until this morning had resulted in 15 arrests and 78 charges for several of those incidents. Further escalating this investigation, as we all know, was the discovery of a caravan at Dural on the 19th of January, which contained explosives and direct threats directed towards the Jewish community. This particular matter, due to the possibility that it breached the threshold of a terrorist incident, was investigated under joint management arrangements with our joint counter-terrorism team partners, the Australian Federal Police, ASIO and the New South Wales Crime Commission. This was investigated under Operation Kissinger and based on the potential threat needed to be investigated at its highest. Very quickly following the detection of the caravan, it was identified that there was strong and significant crossover between Strikeforce Pearl and Operation Kissinger. Operation Kissinger was further complicated with external reporting provided to the operation which could not be discounted without investigation. This reporting escalated Operation Kissinger into a multi-jurisdictional investigation involving other jurisdictions. Once arrests, as I've previously alluded to, were made in relation to Strikeforce Pearl, it is apparent that attacks reduced, and we haven't seen a significant attack since the 2nd of February this year. This has given investigators the opportunity to focus on previous investigations. Additionally, due to further identified links between the investigations, a New South Wales Detective Superintendent was placed in charge of both the investigative actions of Strikeforce Pearl and Operation Kissinger. As a result of these ongoing inquiries and the significant investigative work, officers attached to Strikeforce Pearl conducted overt activity commencing at 6 a.m. this morning. This was in the form of a further 11 search warrants and 3 firearm prohibition order searches. This has resulted in the arrest of a further 14 individuals and they're charging with 49 offences linked to Strikeforce Pearl. These individuals are in various forms of processing and search warrants are still underway. Including today's activities, Strikeforce Pearl has charged 29 individuals for a total of 127 charges. Additionally, Operation Kissinger engaged in overt activity in conjunction with officers from the Australian Federal Police in the form of 2 search warrants and 3 firearm prohibition order searches. Whilst this activity has not resulted in any arrests, it has provided valuable evidence to progress the investigation, which is ongoing. It is apparent that the incidents being investigated by both Pearl and Kissinger were orchestrated by an organised crime element and conducted to further their own causes. This was alluded to as a possible motive early on in the investigation, but as also alluded to, investigations need to be conducted at their highest before they are diminished. None of the individuals we have arrested during Pearl have displayed any form of antisemitic ideology. However, the threat to the community through the use of arson and the presence of explosives was very real. I understand the angst these incidents have had on the Jewish community, who we have been in constant contact with. We don't believe there is any ongoing threat to the community from a terrorist act. However, outside of Pearl, we are continuing to see anti-Semitic incidents, and each of these will be fully investigated. Whilst the activities of today have enabled us to give some comfort to the community, our investigations are ongoing and will continue until we consider we have entirely resolved the issues that have confronted us. We have further arrests and further persons of interest that we wish to interview, and the operations will be ongoing until those matters are resolved. I'll now hand you over to my counterpart in the Australian Federal Police, Deputy Commissioner Chrissy Barrett. We'll take questions later.
Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon. I am AFP Deputy Commissioner National Security Chrissy Barrett. This is the first time the AFP has publicly provided details about Operation Kissinger, which is an investigation into those responsible for a caravan found with explosives and anti-Semitic material in Dural on the 19th of January. Within hours of the caravan being found, any perceived threat was mitigated, and the investigation was referred to the New South Wales Joint Counter-Terrorism Team, which includes the AFP, New South Wales Police, ASIO, and the New South Wales Crime Commission. Almost immediately, experienced investigators within the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team believed that the caravan was part of a fabricated terrorist plot, essentially a criminal con job. This was because of the information they already had, how easily the caravan was found, and how visible the explosives were in the caravan. Also, there was no detonator. Today, I can reveal that the caravan was never going to cause a mass casualty event, but instead was concocted by criminals who wanted to cause fear for personal benefit. The JCTT discussed providing this information earlier to the public. However, during our investigations, we continued to receive tip-offs about other terror plots related to this matter. Out of an abundance of caution, it was agreed by all agencies that the operation would remain in the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team. While we are confident these tip-offs were fake, we could not risk ignoring the information provided, and we kept investigating at the highest level. We are now confident that these tip-offs were fabricated and the caravan plot was an elaborate scheme contrived by organised criminals domestically and from offshore. There were several people who had different levels of involvement in this fake terrorism plot, but put simply, the plan was the following: organise for someone to buy a caravan, place it with explosives and written material of anti-Semitic nature, leave it in a specific location, and then, once that happened, inform law enforcement about an impending terror attack against Jewish Australians. We believe the person pulling the strings wanted changes to their criminal status, but maintained a distance from their scheme and hired alleged local criminals to carry out parts of their plan. However, the plan was foiled. An AFP operational strategy is in place to take action against this individual, and I won't make any further comment on that today. A number of people have been identified as part of this fake terrorism plot, and the AFP is working with local and overseas law enforcement officials in our bid to have all of those responsible brought to justice. Regardless of the motivation of those responsible for this fake plot, this has had a chilling effect on the Jewish community. This twisted, self-serving criminality has terrorised Jewish Australians. What organised crime has done to the Jewish community is reprehensible, and it won't go without consequences. There was also unwarranted suspicion directed at other communities, and that is also reprehensible. Those creating fake terror threats, including using anti-Semitism to elicit a desired response from law enforcement or the courts, face being charged for creating fake plots. And unfortunately for them, they will face the full experience, capability, and dogged determination of terrorism investigators. This is a rare time I'll provide advice to criminals. Serve your time quietly in prison and stop diverting the resources of terrorism investigators. Otherwise, your charges could be significantly upgraded. Too many criminals are accused of paying others to carry out anti-Semitic or terrorism incidents to get our attention and divert our resources. And too many offenders working in the criminal gig economy are accepting these tasks for money. In one example, the AFP will allege a prisoner last year tried to secure high-powered weapons for a fake terror plot so he could provide information to authorities in exchange for a reduction to his drug trafficking sentence. He was identified after the AFP found evidence of his alleged plan on an encrypted platform. He has been charged and now faces a longer term of imprisonment. The AFP has provided more than 90 members to support the activity today. We predict that more arrests will come. I would like to thank all of our partners within the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team for their collaboration, their experience, and cool heads during what has been a very public investigation to date. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
what was the motive, the alleged motive for this plot in terms of this organised crime? Were they looking for a deal? What do you believe? What were you alleged was the motive?
So investigation's ongoing, but I can talk broadly in relation to what we see in what describes crime as a service, where we have this sort of scenario going on. A lot of the time, personal benefit could include a reduction in sentence or leveraging the exchange of information to law enforcement for some sort of personal gain, mostly around sentence reduction and the like.
So the fact is that it never got to that point because someone else had tipped off. Police had been alerted to this caravan left on the road, and then they found the explosives. So the people behind this plot weren't able to ring the police and say, we've got some evidence which could help you.
Yeah, and as I've stated today, based on the information that we had very early on, after the caravan was located, led us to believe very early on that this was a fabricated plot.
The people that have been charged in connection with the caravan, do you think they were just pawns in this fake plot?
So what we see with this methodology, as I've described, is we see people looking to leverage certain scenarios for their own personal gain, and we also see them looking to hire local or lower level criminals to carry out some of these incidents.
Deputy Commissioner, do you mind? I know you can't go into that specific person you were mentioning. Do you mind just giving us a bit of a colour or understanding of the exact group, or is it a known group? Is it a collection of individuals, or is it a specific known group already known to law enforcement?
So investigation's ongoing, so I won't go into specifics other than to say this person who we allege is pulling the strings is known to organised crime, known in the organised crime environment.
Is that the same person as this James Bond character that popped up in the Bondi incidents? Is the Strike Force PRESS? Is that, without going into who that is that the same person? Do AFP allege?
I'm not going to go into that level of detail.
Is the person in Australia, is the person we're talking about, the person pulling the strings, based here in Australia?
We have a number of ongoing targets, so some are based in Australia, some are based offshore.
Was that person in jail or
I'm not going to provide that level of detail.
Can you shed any more light on the concerns you hold about possible offshore actors?
Specific to the caravan, to Operation Kissinger. So as I've already stated, we're looking at a number of targets offshore and looking at how that is interacting with local organised crime figures for the furthering of these types of plots.
Do you mind clarifying?
People who have been arrested today, can you just clarify whether any of them are facing charges specifically in relation to the caravan? And if so, how many of them and how far up the chain are they in the caravan plot?
I'll let Dave answer that question in relation to today's arrests.
Whilst a number of arrests have been made today and overt activity was conducted in relation to the caravan in Kissinger, no arrests directly related to that caravan plot have been made. They've all been in relation to Pearl offences, but as Chrissy said, the investigation's ongoing.
So why who alleges pulling the strings has not yet been arrested?
That's correct.
So why are you today able to go public with this information when you still haven't arrested anybody over the caravan? What's changed?
The caravan job, as I indicated, was orchestrated by the same individual or individuals that were orchestrating the Pearl incidents, which is why we put them under one common detective superintendent, so that there was no potential for isolation of evidence under Pearl that might have been relevant to Kissinger and vice versa, so that that detective superintendent had full visibility over all of the jobs that we believed had a common source.
So we've heard today from Deputy Commissioner Barrett the motivation behind the caravan plot. What do you think the motivation was behind all of the other anti-Semitic attacks under Pearl, where there actually were arson attacks, there were graffiti attacks? What's in it there for the criminals involved?
Exactly the same. It was about causing chaos within the community, causing threat, causing angst, diverting police resources away from their day jobs, to have them focus on matters that would allow them to get up to or engage in other criminal activity. There are a variety of reasons why individuals do this. We've seen it before numerous times. Chrissy's outlined a matter with the AFP. We have numerous offers of criminals trying to get some benefit from court or some benefit from the judiciary by handing things in, by providing information. It's not uncommon, but all of these link back to the same common source, whether they be Pearl or Kissinger. Kissinger, the caravan, was certainly an escalation with the inclusion of explosives and the notes which would lead people to believe that certain Jewish facilities were at threat. However, it was an escalation from what we had already seen in Strike Force Pearl.
Can I just add to that? Sorry, can I just add to that? To your question about why today, why we come out today. So I just want to reassure that throughout, from the first day that we located the caravan, there's been ongoing discussions in the Joint Counter-Terrorism team about, of course, wanting to come out as early as we can to give some comfort to the Jewish community. We've been very, very aware of that. So today is the first time where we've been in a position, of course, having to balance, you know, needing to provide that information to the public, and we understand that, but also balancing the operational security and our ongoing investigative strategies. So that's why today we're at a point where, although we haven't made any arrests, we are at a point in the investigation where we feel it's very important to come out and provide that comfort to the Jewish community. The other thing I would just say, your question about this methodology, what is becoming increasingly concerning for us is that I think crime as a service has existed for a very long time, but we're starting to see it very much intersecting with national security, and it's absolutely reprehensible that criminals would be taking advantage of the current environment when we know there is already a lot of fear and a lot of anxiousness in the environment, to be leveraging that for their own benefit. It's an extremely concerning shift that we've seen, and hence why we've had the Joint Counter-Terrorism team investigating this, our best terrorism investigators, in relation to this matter.
We've got there being 14 attacks, we think, Dave?
Under Strike Force Pearl, there's more anti-Semitic attacks, but 14 of that serious
14
nature.
Anti-Semitic attacks were anti-Semitic, but you're saying that they weren't being carried out by people with anti-Semitic views; they were being led by criminals.
Correct.
And so just on that,
For all of
point,
those
Deputy Hudson,
incidents,
on that
you don't have any evidence that it is being driven by hate. You say that it's alleged that it's organised crime.
Correct.
And Deputy Hudson, just partly for me, because I think my wires got crossed. So this individual who's pulling the strings hasn't been arrested, but he's the individual police suspect is, for want of a better term, mastermind. And the people arrested today, even if not directly for the caravan, there's links between the caravan and Pearl's other arrests, and they're the ones alleged he's the ringleader, and then the ones arrested are also arrested in allegedly directing the lower levels. But partly for me, I've understood that correctly.
The Australian Federal Police has more information in relation to what's going on offshore, obviously, and there's some things that are unknown still to New South Wales Police, which we'll be further exploring. But all of the Pearl matters, I'm suggesting, the 14 incidents, and also the caravan job being investigated under Operation Kissinger, are all being orchestrated by the same individuals.
So just a question on the arrests that you've made. You said that you didn't believe anti-Semitism was an ideology for any of those arrested. Do you also believe that anti-Semitism was not an ideology for anyone higher up pulling any of the strings on any of the incidents?
I think what these organised crime heads have done is play to vulnerabilities in the community. Obviously, there have been anti-Semitic attacks of a lower nature and a lot of anger and angst within the community. We've seen that since October the 7th, 2023. We've seen an escalation in anti-Semitism generally since that date, even though it existed well before that. Certainly an escalation since October the 7th. And I think these organised crime figures have taken an opportunity to play on the vulnerability of the Jewish community.
Can I
Deputy
ask,
Barrett,
in relation to what you've said about possible offshore actors, do you believe that that's a state actor involved? Or can you shed any more light on that overseas concern playing into the organised crime?
Yeah, so certainly we have a number of lines of inquiry offshore. We're using our extensive international network of AFP members based offshore. That is for a lot of the investigations that we do, whether they're national security, crime investigations, that everybody's very, very well aware. And we've been on the record a lot of times to say a lot of our targets are offshore or are orchestrating things from offshore. In relation to this matter, in relation to the caravan, we have no evidence of a involvement of a foreign state actor. I bring you back to the previous statements around we've got what we're seeing is a picture around the organised crime environment as opposed to a state actor.
Commissioner Hudson mentioned that Kissinger was complicated by external reporting that could not be discounted without investigation. Is that the false tip-offs? And can you explain why nobody's been arrested and charged for the false tip-offs yet?
So that is the reference that Dave was making, one and the same, to the tip-offs that were coming in. What I can say to that is that forms part of our ongoing investigation. So we still have investigative strategies in play. So I won't go into any more detail around that, other than to say, obviously, when that information was coming in, it had to be treated at its highest, which has led to us being able to come out today. I know there's been obviously a real want from the community to hear from us earlier, but we had to really, work to validate that information before we could come out and describe it as false information.
And this person that you say has orchestrated, you're saying that they're not overseas, they're within Australia.
I'm saying there's targets onshore and offshore.
The person
Yes.
that's pulling the strings, just trying to clarify why they've not been arrested.
There are ongoing strategies in play. That's where I will leave it.
And is he in Australia, or is this person in Australia or offshore?
Yeah, I haven't confirmed it's a he, so it's
That's
a
okay,
person.
sorry.
Yes. There are people onshore and offshore. That's as far as I'm going to go in relation to that.
More than one.
We have a number of lines of inquiry that are still active.
Can I have more questions,
Commissioner
guys?
Hudson, can I quickly ask you, last year there was quite a huge amount of attention, police resources given to the cocaine trade in Sydney. We formed quite a big strike force with Magnus. Is there any evidence, any belief in police investigations that these plots were in part designed to take resources away from anti-drug policing, perhaps make it easier for these groups to conduct the drug trade?
I think there are a variety of purposes why these strategies are employed by organised crime. To distract law enforcement from their normal positions is one of them. As I think I've previously said at press conferences, I have State Crime Command organised crime detectives working on Strike Force Pearl at the moment, which has distracted them from their normal job. Having said that, we have taken actions to ensure that investigations in relation to organised crime more generally have not diminished by moving resources from elsewhere.
So it didn't work.
Didn't work.
Last question. Right, these charges today then, what are these people be charged with? What have they done specifically? What are your allegations?
There's a variety of charges across the 14 individuals. They range from participating in a criminal group to conducting arson attacks, to providing vehicles, to stealing vehicles, to cloning vehicles, and a variety of other offences, including some matters that we detected at the execution of the search warrants, such as drugs and other things.
So do you think what we've explained today will give any comfort to the Jewish community? I know that they've been part of this strategy, but these attacks have been ghastly, of course, by criminal groups, not anti-Semitic people with radical views. Do you think that gives them any comfort that society mightn't be as bad as... It's a hard one to answer, but you know what I'm saying?
I think there's some comfort to be taken by the Jewish community that it's not numerous people out there conducting the severity of the attacks we saw in relation to what happened in the Eastern Suburbs, the 14 incidents that escalated in relation to the attacks on the Newtown synagogue, the LOR synagogue, the fire bombings of cars, the abhorrent graffiti that was spray painted on cars and houses. That is a very small group and potentially one individual behind all these matters, which I think the community should take some comfort in. Having said that, we have seen an escalation in anti-Semitism attacks, not to the severity of what's being investigated under Strike Force Pearl, but certainly an escalation over the last 18 months. And I think that's of ongoing concern to police, and I know being in frequent contact with the Jewish community, it's of ongoing concern to them as well.
Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone.